Golden State Media Concepts bring you Book Review Podcast, a haven for bookworms of all ages and the widest genres, from mystery to memoirs, romance to comedy, fantasy to sci-fi. If you love to read, this is a podcast for you. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Book Review Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the GSMC Book Review Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Sarah. I am happy to be with you to bring you another author interview. As I mentioned at the end of the last episode, this one is with a friend of mine, so that's always really exciting. I can't believe how many people I personally know who have written books. I love it. It's wonderful. Usually I tell you what we did over the weekend, and I think we did something, but I can't remember what it was. Well, I did this interview. We're going to go with that because it was a laid-back weekend, so that was cool. But this is a friend of mine, and we actually both moved here from California to Portugal. My husband and I, shortly after we moved here, were touring a gym that he was thinking about joining at the tennis club here, and we were walking around and we heard a voice, and we both said, our ears pricked up, and we both said, that's an American accent. We always listen for that while we're here, and because there's a lot of great accents here, but American and Canadian always prick our ears. So my husband, being the very social creature that he is, said, "Hi, where are you from?" And it was Elizabeth, and she said, "I'm from California." And we said, "Oh my gosh, we moved here from California." Turns out that Elizabeth and her husband had moved here exactly 1 week before we had moved here. They moved from the San Francisco Bay Area. We moved from the Sacramento area, so we were very close when we lived in California, and then we ended up in the same town in Portugal. How crazy is that? So we started hanging out a little bit. We got to know them more, really enjoy spending time with them, and it turns out that Elizabeth was writing a book, and she said, of course, we talked about what we do, and the podcast came up, and she said, "Would you ever think about having me on the podcast when my book is published?" And I said, "Heck yeah, I would." And I'm so glad that I did, because that means that I got to experience her book, which is geared toward middle grade readers. The protagonist is 12, so lots of different ages can read it, of course, but that would probably be where it is earmarked for readers, is that middle grade area. And so I got to experience her writing through that story and experience a little bit more of her interests. She, as you will hear in the interview, loves basketball, was a basketball coach, women's basketball coach, played basketball, and but reading the story and reading the story written by somebody that you actually know is fun, because you get to see bits and pieces of the person that you like and enjoy and care about in their writing. So it's been really special for me to get to go through this process with Elizabeth. Did I say Elizabeth? Oh my gosh, Elizabeth Romero Stanley is my guest today. Wow, I got so excited that I don't think I properly even introduced her. Elizabeth, my apologies, but it's in the title of the episode, so I'm guessing you probably knew that going in, but I should have said that at the very beginning. Anyway, the book is called I Love This Game, and the author, I'll say it again, Elizabeth Romero Stanley. Let me give you a description of the book, and that is as follows. I Love This Game is a must-read for children of all ages. It is not only a highly enjoyable and entertaining story for the reader, walking alongside the lovable Peyton throughout her journey and rooting for her the whole way, but what stands out are the values that are highlighted throughout this wonderful story from beginning to end. There are elements that demonstrate the importance of inclusion, respect, kindness, family, commitment, and more. Peyton is a great kid who is learning some valuable lessons. As we all know, growing up, even in the best of circumstances, has many challenges. Navigating the landmines of family, friends, school, insecurities, and responsibilities is rarely easy. This is especially true for Peyton, a smart and thoughtful middle school girl who is always trying to do the right thing. With the support of her ever-loyal dog, Atticus, and her best friend, Michaela, will Peyton find her own inner strength as she tries to manage the relationships most important to her? And so again, that is the description of I Love This Game by Elizabeth Romero Stanley. It is, again, middle grade readers, but I think even younger kids will enjoy it. Independent readers as well as readers reading with a parent or a grandparent or a sibling or however that works in your family. And there's Peyton, who is learning to love basketball, but she's also in the midst of not knowing why her older brother is being, as she calls him, Mean Jackson, as someone who, Jackson is 3 years older than Peyton, and as someone who has a brother who is 4 years older, I totally get that. We went through our ups and our downs, and, I hero worshipped him, and sometimes he made me just so mad, and he was so mean sometimes. I totally relate to that. But then there's a dog, and Atticus is a really good friend to Peyton, as dogs tend to be. So lots and lots of different entry points into this story. But I have said enough. It is time to turn this interview over go to the interview so Elizabeth can talk more about this book. Hi, Elizabeth. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Sarah. I appreciate this opportunity and this platform you're allowing me to talk about my book, my first ever book. I really appreciate it.
I'm excited to talk to you about your first ever book, and we know each other, so that is fun because I don't always get to talk to authors that I actually know personally. So I'm excited to have a conversation with a friend. Before we start talking about the book, if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about yourself so my listeners can get to know you.
Yeah, of course. Well, my name's Elizabeth Romero Stanley. I grew up in a small little farm town in Northern California. And when I went off to college, I headed to the San Francisco Bay Area, spent most of my life there. I love it. Met and married my husband, Robert. And then we had a beautiful daughter, Justice Danielle. And then she had the nerve when she fell in love and then got married and moved to Texas. She had the nerve to do that. And then we're like, well, why are we still rooted? Let's start traveling. So my husband and I took off and headed to Panama. And now we're here in Europe near you. And throughout my career, I was a teacher. I taught some health classes, lots of physical education classes, which I loved, and some psychology classes. I love those too. And most of my teaching was done at the high school level, though I did teach some college. I taught at a JC as well as at the high school I taught. And that high school was in the San Francisco East Bay area, Amador Valley High School. And I really loved teaching and coaching there. And that's my life in a nutshell.
I wish that you had been my physical education teacher in high school, because maybe I would have enjoyed it more, because you are very kind and a very nice person, and I like you. And I did not have that same feeling for my PE teachers in high school or
Thank
ever.
You. Some of my students might go, oh, no, she's just blowing smoke up her butt, because that lady was tough. But, I'd like to think that I inspired a few. And as a coach, I'd like to believe that I inspired most, though there were some lean years in regards to that. But overall, I'd like to think that I made a difference in some people's lives, because good or bad, all the players have made a positive impact on mine. So.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I'm absolutely sure that you have made a positive influence.
Thank you.
So the book is called I Love This Game. Can you give an overview of the story?
Well, yeah, it seems like it has many layers to me, and yet it's, just barely over 100 pages, right? But it's about a girl who's looking back, trying to explain how she found her one true love. And it's not a person. And in this day and age, what else would a young girl want to do? And in media, we think of her as falling in love with a boy, but instead she falls in love with the game, and she falls in love with the greatest game ever, which is basketball. And, she begins devoting her energies to basketball, and she loves it. And along the way, She understands the importance of her village. And a part of her village is her wonderful relationship with her dog and her best friend, Michaela. And as she's trying to navigate the world, she leans heavily on them to help her just be okay with herself and not feel alone. And she had a close relationship early on with her brother. And then, puberty hit him and he didn't want to have anything to do with her. And having that stability of a really good friend and her dog helped her through that time. And then along the way, standing on her own, finding her own true love, which is basketball. So that's the story in a nutshell. And of course, she has some experiences on the court, and I tried not to get too basketball-y, she's at practice and she's sweating and she's doing this drill because, that's not really, not everybody understands, she's in, she needs to square up. Well, what does that mean? And for, use her fingerprints more on her shot. Like, I try not to get too technical, though, explaining that. But the importance of it, repetition, and in our lives, the more we do something, the better we get at it. And it's more about the importance of that.
I'm going to jump in here so we can take the first break of this episode. When we come back, you are going to get a wonderful view into Elizabeth's passion for basketball as she talks about boiling down all of her years of playing basketball, coaching basketball, loving basketball into, how do you condense that into a book so it's not just detail. Stay tuned. You're listening to the GSMC Book Review Podcast, and I will be right back.
Do you want to be healthier, yet you just don't know what to do? All these shows telling you this and that, but nothing seems to work. Well, listen close. Golden State Media Concepts has got something great for you. The Health and Wellness Podcast dedicated to workout trends, healthy eating habits, diet, and everything about healthy living. Join us in our banters as we help you not just live life to the fullest, but live it to the healthiest.
Welcome back to the GSMC Book Review Podcast. I am speaking today with author Elizabeth Romero Stanley about her book, I Love This Game. Let's get back to that interview. Was that hard for you as someone who loves basketball, who's played basketball, who's coached basketball, to not deep dive into the minutia of basketball?
Yes, very much so. Because I've, naively and, like biasly, I just think like, God, if you just play and you just know of these things, and you'll love it. I swear you'll love it because it is the greatest game. And I know as a coach and as a player, the importance of details, and ignoring some of those details, or just, I guess, glossing over them, though explaining them. In being able to explain some of those, Sarah, I was able to explain some of those in various points of the book, because it comes back, the repetition, as I've already stated, because she dedicated herself to the minutia of the game, it paid off down the road, and that's like, I don't know if it's an overt message, but it definitely is a message there. So not getting too down that rabbit hole. Absolutely. It was very difficult for me. It's like, no, they should know. Like, otherwise, what if someone tries to play just using this template, and they wouldn't be as successful. But I tried to sneak it in there as best I could. But I did have editors like, enough already. And that editor, of course, that was some of your great advice. So thank you.
Yeah. What was your initial inspiration for the story?
Kind of two things in parallel, and it all was during the pandemic, of course. So I had the absolute privilege of being a manager at a tutoring center, something I did not think I wanted to do. Like, oh, I work with young kids. What are you, crazy? I work with high school and college kids, but I end up absolutely adoring it, loving every second of it. And then the pandemic hit, and we're Zooming. The kids, especially young girls, middle-aged school, are tuning in just to have that social experience. And we're reading online and we're sharing stories. I'm like, gosh, I would love to share a story with these young girls that they can read. That's not, again, about vampires or falling in love, or, like something maybe we could share. So that was happening. Simultaneously, I'm really close with a young girl, and I consider her family, she and her brothers and her mother. And the mother is Erica, and I taught, and she was my student teacher assistant at when she was in high school, and we've stayed close. And she entrusted me to coach her young daughter who wanted to start playing basketball. And I've stayed really close with Uriah, who I mention and acknowledge at the end of the book. And Erica let me coach and spend, she trusted me like an aunt for her daughter. And I've spent so much time with Uriah. And the thing I probably love the most about Uriah is that she has learned from her mother to love reading. She just loves reading. She'll sit down and just pick up a book and read it from beginning to end. And I just thought, wow, what if Uriah and I could share a story together? And we share basketball together because I've had started coaching Uriah since she was like probably 7 years old, and now she's 14. And it would be so great if I can kind of teach her a little bit about basketball, but also help her understand how I'm a part of her village. I'm helping, I'd like to believe, and maybe pompously so, that I'm helping build some of her character, or giving her another lens to look through in regards to what do role models look like? What do I want to be? What messages is this old lady providing me through basketball, but also through our time together? We'll go shopping together. Like, got to get groceries, right? You want to jump in the car and go? And we would just go, just like not missing an opportunity to be with that child, connecting with her and giving her the time of day, to let her know, I think she's a uniquely wonderful human being, and I'm willing to take time out of my day and spend it with her, and the value of people investing in them. So I tried to create a story where my time with my JEI kids, my tutoring kids, and my time with Uriah, and bridge those together to create a story that maybe both of them could enjoy.
I love that because, we all have those opportunities to make an impact or make a difference, or just let a young person know that we see them and that we care for them.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit more about Peyton, who is the main character. What about her do you think will resonate with readers?
Well, she's human, right? Mm-hmm. She could be any one of us, and she cares deeply about the people in her world, and she learns early on that betrayal happens, right? Like you could be completely invested in a relationship, and then that diverts like suddenly, and you don't understand it, and you have to navigate, where do I fit in? Was it something about me? And you start evaluating and yourself in that relationship and trying to make sense of it. And I just think she's human, she's whole, she's flawed, but she has a great sense of humor. She doesn't take herself too serious, and she's really smart. She's perceptive. She cares about the people in her lives, and she's willing to ask herself tough questions and ask others, and and she's just trying to get to know herself, which is very, very human, right? We're all trying to figure our own self out and what journeys we want to take and how important they are. And along the way, I'm able to advocate for our administrators, our people in charge of guiding our youth, the importance of extracurriculars and their development. Basketball really came at a time when she needed it. And those relationships that blossomed through her extracurricular, which is basketball, and her human, emotional, physical, and psychological development was because of those extracurriculars. And I think that just basketball made her a better person.
Well, and she's 12, which is one of the hardest ages. I think it's, I was 12 once, you were 12 once, you've had a 12-year-old daughter. It's not easy. You've got all the craziness happening in your body and your hormones in your brain. And one thing that I like about this book is that, she's trying to find herself. She's trying to figure things out for herself. She's got a difficult relationship with her brother. And, I love books of all kinds. I love fantasy books, but this is a book about a regular girl living a regular life. She doesn't find out that she's a wizard. She doesn't, have to go on some great quest to figure out that she's special. She just she's working through life like all kids. And I think that's really helpful.
Thank you. Yes, that's exactly that was the exact intention as I was going through. It's like, we're all just trying to do our best to navigate our plight. That really is it. Yeah.
What age group do you think is going to respond best, or what age group are you hoping will respond best to this book?
Well, all, of course, Sarah.
Of course.
Well, I mean, there is some universal experiences and understandings that are expressed in the book. So anyone who cares for those individuals in their lives or loves a dog, I think would enjoy the story. But of course, as I'm having to express to the platforms and publishers, what is the age group? It's definitely young readers, middle school age in particular. I mean, I'm really threading the needle here. Like, it's for young girls from 10 to 15, specifically, as when I wrote it, it's really that age group. But if you've worked diligently and devoted a lot of time to something, you will understand and find moments where you can relate to this story. If you were an athlete, in particular, if you played basketball, I don't care what age you are currently, if you dedicated yourself to a sport, this story will ring very true to you about the relationships, about repetition, about especially your teammates, and that, I intentionally included the time before practice and after practice, because during practice, that you don't really have that social time, though you are growing together because you're going through, sometimes the worst of times, as you're running liners or, sweating and working hard and being yelled at by the coach or failing, during that time before, you're really bonding and connecting with your teammates. And then when it's all said and done, you're both tired or you're all tired and you just finished that together. There's a sense of camaraderie and in a sense of, we did this together, and then you can just be together in those moments. So if you value any of those experiences, or you want to live vicariously through those, then I think this book can transcend age in that sense.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
Time for the second break of this episode. When we come back, I'll be asking, and Elizabeth will be talking about the autobiographical elements within this story. So stay tuned. You're listening to the GSMC Book Review Podcast, and I will be right back.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be, visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to the GSMC Book Review Podcast and my interview with author Elizabeth Romero Stanley.
Now it's fun to talk to you because I know you a little bit. So I often ask about autobiographical elements, but I can see them in this one. So there's the rescue. He's halfway a rescue dog, but I know that you have a rescue dog. I know you love basketball. So how deliberate were you in putting autobiographical elements in the story?
Yeah, that's a gotcha question. Yeah, there's no way that I wouldn't include those things just because I think, a rescue dog who rescues who, right? And our dog, Zadie, that has now been she has her own passport. We took her to Portugal and we took her to Panama. And she was deeply, deeply traumatized. And now she's living her best life with a passport here in Europe. But yeah, I just think I saw my daughter when we rescued our first dog, Liberty, the greatest dog on the planet Earth ever. And our daughter was only child. And, she was accountable to her own whim, right? She didn't have siblings to navigate. And, she was the first grandchild on my husband's side. So the world really did revolve around her. But when she got a dog, she had to be accountable to someone else. And just watching her learn through that and develop through those experiences, I think I wanted to include that because it is about a young girl learning to navigate her world and be accountable. And what better to convey that than a loyal dog, right? Not only is the dog loyal to her and help her, but that doesn't happen unless she devotes herself and her time and not be negligent in that regards to that dog. So it's about that whole accountability. And of course, if we're talking about accountability, I'm going to use a dog in that scenario. And then with basketball, if you're going to fall in love with anything or anyone, it might as well be basketball. It's the greatest gift to the universe and the only one true sport. So, I definitely, if I'm going to, when I set out to write my first book, everybody says write about what you know, and I don't know anything better than basketball. Almost to the point where I've obsessed over it at the expense of other relationships and other experiences, and I wouldn't trade it for a second.
And I'm sure that your husband and daughter have known you long enough that they know this about you. So they know that basketball is just kind of another member of your family.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. In terms of your character development, especially with Peyton, did you have a really good sense of her before you started writing, or did you let her evolve as you wrote, or a combination?
Well, I think it's more she just evolved. When I started down the road of she really was a cheerleader first. And I'm like, I can't write about this. I don't know enough about it. But I did want to pay respect to cheerleaders because as an athlete, or I should say, as a basketball player, there was always an almost adversarial relationship that basketball players have or have had with cheerleaders. And I personally can say, with all due humility, I never gave cheerleaders enough respect. So I kind of set out down that road of trying to give them due respect. And but I don't know enough about their experiences. I wouldn't know how to hold up a girl and not drop them. And definitely I would be the one holding up the girl. No way would I be the one at the top. But so I don't know about that enough to write about it. So Peyton had to take another journey. And in that journey, if I'm going to take her through something I know and the thing that I fell in love with around the same age as Peyton, then it had to be basketball, right?
Mm-hmm. Here's something that I have never told you. I, in fact, was a cheerleader in high school for girls basketball.
Awesome. So you were amazing. And I would hope that I would have shown you respect, but to be honest, there were times I was not as respectful as I should be. And this book is me acknowledging that respect was due. And that is long overdue. That admission is long overdue.
Well, I appreciate that on behalf of cheerleaders, although I was a terrible cheerleader, but I will still say I appreciate it. Yeah. You've touched on this, but I'll ask it more overtly. What do you hope readers will take away from the story?
Start with parents. I hope that parents realize, and our administrators, just anyone understanding the importance of human development, let alone character development, the importance of extracurriculars. And nothing became more obvious during the pandemic than that in my opinion, is children need to get out. They need to play. They need to learn. They need to develop through activity. They need to connect. We're social beings first and foremost, in Elizabeth Romero Stanley's opinion. Take that for what it's worth. And our human connection is so fortified through extracurriculars. So for the adults in the room, just understanding the importance. You want to raise a good human being, give them something that they help them. Don't give it to them. Help them along their way to find something that they can do that they love and are willing to commit to. Because we gain so many things from perseverance, from commitment, from dedication, and from others that we interact along that path. And then for the young folks, just the value of our village, right? Count on the people, find the right people who are going to help you along your journey, because we don't live in a vacuum. And you can be stuck on your little device and have this virtual world, but I'm promising you, the people you meet along your journey face to face in real life, they're going to help you grow and enrich your life and make your life that much better. And you're just going to feel better about yourself if you have a good village around you, your parents, your brothers and sisters, your other family members, your friends, your educators, your coaches, your band instructor, whoever, those people you meet, your boss at work while you're, trying to, if you're even working just a McDonald's job, that boss is impacting your life. And I hope in a positive way, but we could also grow from our negative experiences. I just think our life journey is paved most vibrantly from the wonderful people that we meet and greet along the way.
Yeah, and I think we can learn from the negative experiences, but sometimes the negative experiences take over. It's so easy to focus on those, but what about the people who are the positive in your world and helping you along the way and paying attention to those experiences as well?
Right, exactly. I mean, look how much Peyton learned from Jackson being a jerk to her.
Right.
He was a jerk, but she learned oh, he's flawed too. Oh, he was trying to navigate his world. He was dealing with peer pressure. It didn't have anything to do with her. She internalized all that. And it was just, he wanted her to quit coming to him because he couldn't be there for him. Jackson couldn't be there for Peyton anymore. He didn't have the skills to deal with peer pressure and his friends being jerks to him. It's like, why are you hanging out with your little sister? What are you, I'm sure, you could put any, stupid term in there, derogatory term, what he might have been called during that time. So he just shut the door on her and didn't even consider her feelings, but from that, Peyton learned to navigate, find out what she, who she was, and understand it, and then reconnect with him and open that door back for him. I mean, people can harm us. And if it's not, I shouldn't, maybe harm is a harsh word. People in our lives, like our brother, like Jackson was to Peyton, can do something that disappoints us or hurts us, but we still need to have grace for them to rectify that, to come back into our lives. And if they're worthy of doing so, be open to that. And I think that's a message that Peyton expresses to the reader.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, this is your first book. I'm sure you've learned a ton. Do you want to write more?
Yeah, I would like to think so. The beauty of it is that, I've retired. So, is it something I don't have to pump out books? I'm not beholden onto somebody to pay the bills, though my husband might argue otherwise. It's something I can do, and I don't feel forced to do. And if, all these, now I have more stories rolling through my head, and, I start taking notes. And if any of those ideas really come, or I'm able to blossom those into stories, absolutely, I would pursue that. Well, I should say I have begun to pursue some of those, some of my train of thoughts.
It is time for the final break of the podcast, but hold that thought about potential other books, because I'm nosy and have to ask a million questions, and we'll be talking more about this topic when we come back. Stay tuned. You're listening to the GSMC Book Review Podcast, and I will be right back.
Golden State Media Concepts social media podcast. Time to hashtag everything. We talk about all the fun, crazy stories on social media. From Instagram to Facebook, Twitter to Tumblr, or probably even Friendster. Join us each week as we explore the quirky side of social media. It's the Golden State Media Concepts social media podcast.
It's simple, such a sad song. The one that we rely on to get us.
Welcome back to the GSMC Book Review Podcast and the conclusion of my interview with author Elizabeth Romero Stanley.
Do any of those involve Peyton again, or are you moving in different directions?
Yeah. So everybody has advised me, like, oh, you could really have a multi-series with this young girl. And I had already thought that. Peyton's playing basketball in youth development. She's in middle school, and from middle school, like, the important season when you really decide I'm going to be a ball player is in high school. So the natural evolution is her telling about her high school career. And then, well, what if Peyton decides to quit playing, or what if she decides to continue playing and she plays, it's in the book, I talk about the potential of playing college ball and, earning a scholarship. Does she do that? And if she does, that would be another, volume for the book. So I've definitely had thought about that. The other thing that I've thought in regards to that is tell the same story, but exactly through Jackson's perspective, because many people have that. I mean, that's why I include the afterward when, when she has the interaction with Jackson, is like, why were you such a jerk? That didn't make any sense to me, but to express it more fully. So those are things that I have played with. And then there are some other stories, and I do seem to be fixated on the middle school age, because as I was writing it, as I began telling another story about a young girl navigating her broken home, it was a middle school girl. So I guess I have focus
have a
right
tight
now.
Elizabeth.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which is okay because that's a hard age, and
Yeah.
representation matters. Readers like to see themselves in books.
Right.
So
Right. I
yeah.
appreciate that. Yes.
Since this is your first experience, what advice would you give for somebody who is maybe also thinking about writing?
Do it. And you have to take you have to be willing to take critique and just use it as growth. Uh, I have a old childhood friend who married an author, and he wrote this huge, big, fat novel, like thousands of pages. I could be exaggerating, but that's what it seemed like to me. And he was afraid to. He wrote it and he enjoyed the journey and he considered himself an author, but he was afraid to let anyone read it because what if they didn't like it? And I'm like, you're an author. Like, of course people are going to read it. Like, what's the point? Right. And then I wrote this book. I'm like, oh my God, rejection. Here are my thoughts. And you can see how deeply flawed I am as a human being through these words. So it was at that moment I understood his fear because there is rejection. And I put a lot of time and energy into this. What if you don't like it? But it still is a journey. And any journey we take, there's something to gain from that. And when it comes to one's own stories, people who care about you, they want to hear what you have to say. They want to read what you have to say, and just be open to their critiques as a way to grow and to improve your story. But do write, because why not? We all sit around thinking all day long. Put some of those thoughts to paper and see where it goes, I
love that. Thank you. When you take the time to read for yourself, do you have favorite authors and genres that you turn to?
Well, I'm 100,000% obsessed with Malcolm Gladwell. So if he puts a book, actually, I really like listening to his podcast when he puts out an Audible. Like, oh my gosh, I'm just obsessed. And then if I'm going back to really when I fell in love with reading it, that would be Richard Bach and pretty much anything he's done. And then, more recently, social justice fighters like Nicole Hannah-Jones. I tend to be more focused in that way, though I do love, Daniel Quinn and his book, like it's, yeah, so I'm a little all over the place, but if someone said, who's your favorite author? I would go back and forth, Richard Bach, Malcolm Gladwell. Right now, Malcolm Gladwell really is at the top of my list.
With as much as you love playing basketball, do you like to read basketball related books like memoirs or books that feature basketball, maybe nonfiction?
Yes. Anything to do with basketball, I'm probably going to it's going to just magnetically draw me to it. There'll be nothing I can do to keep myself from going, well, I'm going to at least check it out. And especially if it's something to do with women's or girls basketball. And the biggest reason, Sarah, is because I'm a big believer that sport is sport. It could be a girl playing sports or a boy playing sports or a man, a woman, and everything in between does not matter. It's just the experience of it all. But for my own purposes, I tend to focus more on female athletes in sports and wanting to champion them every way I can, because society is telling us that, there was this one talk show radio guy, and I'm not going to say his name, but he really gets on my nerves. And anytime he has something negative to say about females in sports, he doesn't miss that opportunity. One time he said, like, you have money and you want to invest in a women's professional sport, just take that money and throw it out the window. But at least people down below might be able to, go and buy a pack of cigarettes or whatever. Like, it was just so negative. It's like,
that's unnecessary.
I know. It's like, those are human beings who have dedicated themselves to something, and if you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all. But I'm going to champion anybody, in particular, a female athlete or anyone identifying as a female athlete, I'm going to champion them because we need as many fans as we can. So if you put something out there, Elizabeth is going to take a look at it, because if I can help grow this and subsequently not just help you, but get another young female or someone, deciding to be a female makes no difference to me. I'm going to, I want to create that opportunity for them, or at least maybe I can do this, a little aha moment, like this sounds good to me. This might be my avenue. This might be my love. This might be my passion. And I don't want to keep any females from that. And I want to help it grow. If I could be a small part of somebody saying, you know what, I partook in this and I'm a better person, and Elizabeth Romero Stanley had a little to do with it, then you know what? That's a success to me. I've been a successful human being on planet Earth in my short time that I have been here.
That goes back to the village that you've talked about. We can all support each other in various ways, and just
exactly
choosing to deliberately put anyone down just because you can or you have a platform is nauseating to me.
Yeah, exactly.
So does the book, or do you as an author have a website? Do you have social media? Is there anywhere people can go to find out more about the book or you?
Me and social media, and we are not the best of friends. I've been an educator all my life, as long as I can remember, and I just think social media is so unhealthy. So it's this really hate relationship. I think it's just a hateful platform. But that being said, I'm trying to use social media to help. That's where people are, right? And you can reach millions of people. So I'm trying to create a social media presence. And Ashley King Bischoff and Kirsten Janjigian are helping me with that. Bless them and their young souls. And Ashley did buy up a website, ilovethisgame.com, and she's really helping me try and create some content to help grow this book and have it reach more. And then Kirsten's given me some ideas about what to do. Now, if only I would do it was so difficult for me to post that my book was out. And some people, what do you mean your book is out? When did you write a book? I'm awful with social media. I'm awful about marketing myself. I'm awful about talking about myself. Like, it's so out of my comfort zone. But I have to, right? If I really want to share Payday story, then I've got to do right by her and get more social media savvy and savage for that matter.
Savage,
so yeah, I need to be savage about it for Peyton.
Yep. Oh, the things we do to get us out of our comfort zones, right?
Yeah, yes. Like talking on a podcast, even though I have a podcast, but it's so different being on this end. Like, I can ask a question, then I can go to sleep. Oh, you done? Oh, okay. Here's the next question. It's so different.
Different. I agree.
Yeah.
Well, we've talked about a variety of things, but is there anything that we haven't covered in terms of the book, or anything that you would like to make sure you highlight at this point?
If anyone has a birthday or anniversary or early Christmas gift, or just I love you, I think you should go on Amazon and buy the book. And then hopefully you love it. And if you do, please review it so more people can find it. And if you don't, that's okay. But please don't share that information. Just keep that to yourself, or send me a little DM on Facebook and say, sorry, I didn't enjoy your book. Better luck next time. And that's okay too. But yeah, I would like, I just want young girls to go, hey, there's other things of interest. And this, maybe it's my responsibility of finding out what that is, and not what society says it is, or even me for that matter. But I'm saying, go find what you love, and don't worry if other people think it's okay or not. Don't live for others, live for yourself and your true self, and be authentic. And I think I probably didn't learn that early enough. And I'm glad that I finally did. It might have taken me nearly 60 years to figure it out. But hey, I think it's important. I really do.
Yeah. And everyone's journey is different. So
yeah, exactly.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me about the book and writing.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you, Sarah. It's really been quite the pleasure and honor. I have looked forward to being interviewed by the great Sarah, and I really appreciate your time and the time that you've given me.
And thank you once again to Elizabeth for joining me over the weekend to talk about I Love This Game. It's always fun to get to talk to a friend on the podcast, and this was no exception. It was fun. And for those of you who have been listening for a while, you probably already have figured out that I debated long and hard, am I going to leave in that lovely part about the great Sarah in the end of the interview, because awkward for me, the end. But it was a very kind thing for Elizabeth to say. She was genuine about it, so I'm sucking it up and taking a compliment and leaving it in there. Although my brain's like, no, take that out. We don't take compliments like that. We don't make ourselves bigger than we are. Oh, good old upbringing. At any rate, thank you to Elizabeth for talking to me about her book. I very much appreciate her coming on and hanging out with me for a while. We hang out anyway, but this was a different kind of hanging out, and I very much enjoyed it. Thank you, as always, to you, my listeners. I would not have this podcast without you, and I very much appreciate you as well. I hope that you will join me for the next episode. I have a returning author coming back to the podcast. That is Louise Marburg, and we're going to be talking about her new collection of short stories. This one is called You Have Reached Your Destination. I think it's funny that just a couple weeks ago we had Mark on the podcast with the book Prepare for Departure, and now You Have Reached Your Destination. So feels like a full circle moment, but I'm looking forward to having Louise back on the podcast, so join me for that episode. In the meantime, as always, if you are a fan of this podcast and would like to help me out, I would greatly appreciate it if you could leave a review, written or starred. Either way gets this podcast out to more listeners. And if you haven't done so already, like, subscribe, follow, whatever it is on the platform that you listen to the podcast on. That way you will always know when there are new episodes. And finally, if you're not doing so already, I would love for you to follow the podcast on social media. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Love hearing from you. And if you have questions or comments on episodes, love to hear those. Love to answer the questions. Hope you're having a great week. Whatever you're doing, it's gorgeous and sunny here, so I'm soaking up as much sun as possible. But whatever your week involves, I hope it involves plenty of time to get yourself lost in a good book. Thank you so much.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Book Review Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.